questions are maybe a little bit clunky. Do you have any questions, media, before we start? Otherwise, I think you're all here, and I'm going to bring our participants back into the room. Not yet. Double check. Nobody seems to have questions, though. Yeah, sorry. Just give me a second then, Tamara. Jonas, I'm going to mute you. Media, if you could turn off your cameras, I would appreciate it today, just because I have Zoom speakers.
And it went off while I was doing the presentation.
Normally, I'm okay with the cameras on.
Or like they thought it was somebody in the crowd. They're like, "We're really sorry."
Sean, I'm shutting your camera off too.
I always make sure.
Okay, I'm gonna bring Hanny and Loretta back in. And I'm gonna fix a couple of things. Hanny, we see you. Loretta, we see you. Okay, we're just waiting for Loretta to reconnect.
How are you doing?
All right, you can go live, Tamara, because I think we are good to roll. Okay, just give us a second. We're just starting our live feed and making sure that that is good.
No, it's all good. You know, I'm just reflecting on how press conferences have changed over the last year.
Yeah.
And normally it's definitely been an adjustment to speak with everyone remotely. So thanks to everybody helping set this up and for the media's patience. We're good to go?
We're good.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to begin, as we always do, by acknowledging we're on Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis. I hope everyone had a good weekend. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by a number of leaders in our community, including Mike Ruda, City of Winnipeg's Interim Chief Administrative Officer, Hani Ataan Alubaidi from Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, and our Treaty Commissioner of Manitoba, Ms. Loretta Ross, the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba. You'll be hearing from all four of us. And then, of course, when we're finished, we'll be available to answer your questions. And of course, we are going to be speaking about the city's first ever annual Anti-Racism Week from March 21st to 27th of this year. With that, thank you very much for joining us. I want to begin by stating and just reminding everybody, I'm so incredibly proud to live in a place where people of all cultures, ethnicities and faiths can come together as neighbors, colleagues, friends, and family to share and to learn from one another. It's no coincidence that the longest running multicultural festival of its kind in the entire world is right here in Winnipeg. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think the world would be a much better place if Folklorama were held in cities around the world. And that's because it gives us an opportunity to learn and to understand more about our friends, our neighbors, and fellow community members. But unfortunately, reality is not everyone in our community, our province, our nation, or in fact around the world feel that way. Racism is still very real, and it requires an unrelenting resolve from all of us pushing it back. It's important for every single one of us to continue standing up for what's right. We can't let racism fester in any corner of our community, and eliminating racism will take effort from every member of our community. And when it comes to governments, systemic racism exists at all levels of government and every department of those governments. And as mayor of this level of government, your municipal government, I'm committed to addressing it. And the most important step in solving a problem is admitting and acknowledging that it exists. Since my election, I've worked hard to put the building blocks in place to eliminate and combat racism in our government and in our city. This includes the creation and the launch of the Mayor's National Summit on Racial Inclusion, our Year of Reconciliation, the creation and implementation now over multiple years of Winnipeg's first ever Indigenous Accord, the creation of the Mayor's Indigenous Advisory Circle, reconciliation training for all employees of the City of Winnipeg, the creation of an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Program Coordinator, from what we understand, the first ever of its kind in Canada, first ever Human Rights Committee of Council, and of course some of the work that's flowed out of that committee, including the Welcoming Winnipeg policy that's looking at place names and monuments, the Newcomer Welcome and Inclusion policy, which includes strategies and sections directly discussing a city without racism. And in the coming weeks, training will commence on anti-oppression, including anti-racism and cultural competency for all employees of the City of Winnipeg. Strong leaders in our community have put tremendous efforts towards eliminating racism, but there's so much more work to do. Building on these efforts, a number of new initiatives were created in July of 2020 to go even further. Part of that effort is why we're here today, to officially launch the city's first ever Anti-Racism Week. Anti-Racism Week will be held from March 21st to 27th of this year in partnership with Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba, Elmwood Community Resource Centre, Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties, Human Rights Hub, and Black History Manitoba. It'll be a week of events and conversations that center around the theme, what would Winnipeg look like without racism? And I want to thank these incredible organizations for their work in helping create this week of awareness to really shine a bright spotlight into the darkness. I hope to see members of our community embrace this week and continue standing up for what's right. I also hope that this week empowers people to learn ways to speak out and to help us as a community eliminate racism when we see injustice occurring. Together, we can eliminate racism and make our community stronger in the process. Thanks once again for everyone who's committed to this cause and for all your efforts as we launch Anti-Racism Week for the first time. Thank you, merci, and miigwech. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mike Ruda, the city's interim Chief Administrative Officer. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. As the Mayor mentioned, today we are here to formally launch the city's Anti-Racism Week. This initiative started in July 2020 when Council directed the Public Service to build on the work being done as part of the Newcomer Welcome and Inclusion policy. Council directed us to work with a number of community partners, two of whom are with us today, to develop the city's Anti-Racism Week. Anti-Racism Week will happen from March 21st to 27th to coincide with the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which takes place on March 21st, 2021. As interim CAO, I am the chair of the committee overseeing this effort. A number of initiatives are being organized for the week in the hopes of starting a citywide conversation exploring ways to identify and eliminate systemic racism. What makes this Anti-Racism Week especially meaningful is that it's truly a community event. I want to thank all the community partners who've worked so hard to help plan and organize the week. They have invested countless hours planning and helping provide direction on the steps we should be taking to make a meaningful impact. There are a number of events being organized for the public to participate in, which will be listed on the city's website. The list of public events will continue to be updated online as new events are confirmed. In addition to events that are being organized for the public to participate in, we are also using the week as an opportunity to renew our focus on this work within the public service. We're hosting a virtual cafe and panel discussions for employees to take part in. We're encouraging staff to check out the virtual resources that community organizations are offering throughout the week. And members of the city's senior management team and elected officials will be taking part in a full-day training session. We know we cannot eradicate the negative impact of racism if we do not acknowledge it exists. We also know that we will not solve racism in 1 week. And this is about more than just 1 week. This is a journey that will take time. And the work we are doing during this week is a starting point for us, a start to these bigger conversations, and to continue to work closely with our community partners. We know we need to do better, and we are confident we can. We remain committed to moving forward and improving the workplace for our employees and to fostering community trust with the people we serve. We understand this will require a tremendous amount of focus and patience, but we know we cannot remain silent. And instead, we must lead the way in changing our culture for the benefit of our employees and residents of the city. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Gives me great pleasure to turn things over virtually to Immigration Partnership Winnipeg and Mr. Al Ubaidi. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mike Ruta, for your support and leadership. I just want to take a few moments and recognize the efforts and the work and the dedication of many people from the city, different city departments, city staff, worked with us as community leaders and community members to really, for the first time, to come together to establish a specific understanding, specific action plan, and a fertile land for long-term commitments with respect to the fight against racism. For us as newcomers and new Canadians in this society, it is a great opportunity to sit together with our leadership with different community partners and community members coming together to plan against racism, because racism to us it is something that is incredibly important in terms of our home, our establishment, about our start in a new life, in a new country. So coming together in this specific circle would give us that motivation to feel and think that we are part of the society, we are positively contributing to our society. And I want to just highlight the fact that I want to make sure that all newcomer children would grow up in a city where they feel welcomed, safe, contributing to their larger society, and feeling that they are part of the society, accepted, welcomed, and also recognized. And for that reason, I'm inviting all our citizens here in the city to take this opportunity as an invitation to focus and invest on the common ground, on commonalities, and avoid thinking negatively about the differences that create division and create problems among the society, which we have to recognize that exist in the form of racism. And for that reason, I want to just recognize the fact that we have been working for very many weeks to put this work together, and we're very excited to launch it on the 21st of March as an anti-racism week, a week full of activities where all different cultures, community members, city officials, everyone welcome to contribute to that week, and make sure that we are going to start the week of work, but we're not going to end by that week. We're going to carry on with the long-term commitment. We want to make sure that the newcomer voices are represented, reflected at decision-making level, making sure that we are connected to our Indigenous communities, making sure that we are all actively engaged in decision-making that impact people's lives. And for that reason, we are very excited to be part of this collaborative work, and we are looking forward to contribute to it and making sure that this week will be repeated over the years, and hopefully we will see Winnipeg without racism, because it is our vision to see a city that is home for everyone, regardless of their ethnic, religious, cultural background. I once was told in order for me to fit in, I have to give up on my culture. And for that reason, I felt more committed, more motivated to make sure that this is not going to happen when my children grow up. And for that reason, I am motivated more than ever to commit myself, the staff of IPW, which is Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, to work with the city and with all our partners to make sure that racism, it will be dealt with and dealt well with in an effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those that are watching this press conference, if you're not familiar with the work of Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, long before today's announcement, been very busy helping so many in our community, and just want to thank you for your ongoing leadership and your entire team's work. Included in strong community leaders is our Treaty Relations Commissioner, Ms. Loretta Ross. I've had the opportunity to work with her in the past, and it gives me great pleasure to turn the virtual podium over to our Treaty Relations Commissioner.
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mike and Hanny. I also want to extend my gratitude to the staff of the city and the fellow members of the steering committee who have certainly worked long hours, and their commitment is strong to addressing racism. The Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba is excited to be part of the City of Winnipeg's Anti-Racism Week. We're hopeful that we can use this time to learn about each other as colleagues, neighbors, and residents, and to also explore how we can work together to combat the racism that continues to exist within the City of Winnipeg. The week of March 21 to 27 provides for a number of awareness activities and conversation. Some of the activities are internal to the City of Winnipeg, its employees, managers, and political leaders, but there are a number of events, as we've heard, that are open to the residents of the City of Winnipeg, and I really want to encourage everyone to get involved in some manner. I do want to congratulate the City of Winnipeg for taking the initiative to have this week-long event, and as Mike and others have said, we realize that you can't eliminate racism in a week. It is a beginning, it's a start, and it's one that requires ongoing attention and to commitment. But I think it's important when you dedicate an entire week to allow for some of that concentrated effort to focus on ways that we can begin to eliminate racism. And I hope that other cities and levels of government take the City of Winnipeg's lead and create similar opportunities for all Manitobans, wherever you live. This week is not just an exercise of imagining what a city would look like without racism. It's an opportunity to do some critical thinking and examination of our city and where and how we can make concrete changes. For too long, we have allowed racism to continue, and it's time we took a strong stance against it. And we can only do that together. Winnipeg is home to one of the largest Indigenous populations in Canada. And we know that Indigenous people have suffered and continue to suffer under racism. This is home for First Nations people. This is the only home that they know, and they should feel welcome and respected in their own home. Racism hurts, racism divides, and racism takes lives. We can no longer afford to have people continue to suffer under racism. We have to be prepared to have the difficult conversations. We have to be prepared to critically examine our systems. And we have to critically look at how we treat each other, our neighbors. And we have to make those difficult decisions that are needed to effect change. We cannot be afraid of change, because it's only through change that we can create an environment and a home for everyone, including the First Peoples of this land. We each have a responsibility to ensure that all citizens can live, work, and play in a city that is respectful and inclusive. Miigwech.
Thank you very much for your powerful words, and also just your ongoing work. I know you're doing work throughout this province, and we really appreciate it here in the City of Winnipeg. I'll just encourage those that are watching this press conference. You can learn more about this week by visiting winnipeg.ca/anti-racism, where there's a full list of events and calendar for you to check out at your leisure. With that, I think we can turn things over to questions to the media.
Okay, we'll start with Amber from Global.
Hi, so I'm just curious about what this will entail now, and maybe what the future of this will be once COVID's not maybe a problem. Do you have a bigger vision for what this could be?
Are you asking specifically with respect to Anti-Racism Week?
Yeah, like will there be like more in-person events? What kind of things are you guys kind of planning for the future too?
think the short answer is yes. Yeah, I mean, when we're through this COVID storm, I would expect that in-person events will be, will be a lot more common than we're able to right now, not just with Anti-Racism Week, but just in general throughout the city. But I think right now the focus has been on just preparing for this first year, and hopefully Winnipeggers will embrace it and be engaged. As our Treaty Relations Commissioner just mentioned, these are difficult conversations, and for far too long, I think as a community we've avoided having those difficult conversations, and this week is intended to really encourage them.
Okay, my follow-up question for you, Mr. Mayor, is I know anti-racism has been a priority for you, for the whole time you've been mayor. Have you noticed an improvement in the city, or have things kind of stayed the same? What would you say over your time? What have you kind of seen in the city?
I would say that I think the nature of the dialogue is a lot more public, and in my, and I can only speak for myself and what I've observed, I think we're having more of the conversations that have been needed. Sadly, racism still exists, and when I provided a response to that Maclean's article in 2015, I said, it's unlikely we're going to actually eliminate racism, but we're going to try, and that's what we continue to do, because nobody wins by having systemic racism throughout our society. It holds our community back, and it holds our individuals back. And I just ask yourself, I mean, if you or anyone feels like a second-class citizen because of their race, and we know that there's far too many people in our community who feel that way, and so the work is needed. I'd say, until we get to a point where no one feels like they're a second-class citizen, then we gotta keep working at this as a community in an honest way.
James from the Winnipeg Sun.
Yeah, good morning. Just referencing a letter from James Van Gerwen. The ATU says transit drivers are on the receiving end of a lot of racism. What's the city doing about it?
Oh, well, I mean, what we're doing today is announcing Anti-Racism Week, so we can encourage the dialogue and the actions throughout our community. But if you listen to my opening statements, I listed a number of things that we're doing citywide, including reconciliation training for all of our employees, as well as now initiating anti-oppression and cultural competency training for all members of the public service. I'm also taking the training, as will other members of council. They're expected to be taking the training as well. I'll add that, as far as I know, we're the only level of government that's conducting this level of training. I'm not aware that the province of Manitoba has mandated all employees of the provincial public service, nor am I aware if the federal government has initiated training. And so I want to thank the public service for their efforts, and all of our partners, including two of whom you've heard from today, that are helping with that level of training. There's always going to be more work for us to do, and we're committed to continuing that work.
Thanks for that. Just a follow-up question. ATU says its members have not received Indigenous training. I'm wondering if that's going to happen in the near future.
My understanding is training has occurred for all members of the public service, and as new employees come in, there's a process to make sure that they get trained. I don't know if Mike has anything to add to that, but you may want to follow up with Indigenous Relations or our corporate comm, who can give you some more details. But the reconciliation training was initiated years ago and has been rolling out, and all members of the public service have been encouraged, and my understanding have taken it. But I took the training as well, as did the members of council at the time, and it was incredibly worthwhile. It was a great learning experience. And again, only level of government that we know that's even trying to roll out training and doing it for all of our staff.
Joyanne from the Winnipeg Free Press.
Further to the ATU comments, I kind of read their comments as saying that the drivers got 2 hours of that training, whereas everyone else got 2 days. It was really sort of a gap for that one department. Is that maybe the discrepancy here, that they didn't get the full training?
Well, the full training is different depending on who you are in the city. Senior managers received 2-day training. Members of council, myself included, received the half-day training, as did the vast majority of employees in the city of Winnipeg. The fact that if they want additional training, that's great. And that's good. That actually is good to see that there's an interest. I know ATU has taken a strong stand to combat racism, and transit operators are subjected to racism at times, as are other members of the public service. The fact that they're wanting to have more training is a positive sign. Again, the level of training and the length of training, it does differ on what your job is. But I know, speaking for myself, it was the half-day training, and that was the vast majority of employees in the city of Winnipeg received the half-day training.
And so you mentioned something that they also commented upon, saying that there is a lot of diversity among drivers, and they are some of the ones on the front lines of dealing with the public. So they've had issues with complaints of racism. Is that something that you were aware of? Have you gotten a lot of feedback from drivers that they're experiencing this on the job and having these negative effects?
Absolutely. I mean, over the years, I've certainly been privy to some of the feedback that ATU has provided, as well as our transit officials and senior officials. There's no doubt that racism affects members of our public service throughout our departments, and it affects people negatively. So that's why it's incredibly important that Winnipeggers support our efforts, and members of the public service, including ATU, continue to support the efforts to combat racism. And I want to thank them for their support to date. It's certainly been appreciated, and it demonstrates that the leadership of council in terms of this anti-racism week. This was directed by council in 2020, and it's needed. And I'm hoping that it can become an annual event for the reasons that ATU is pointing out.
Michael from CTV.
Yeah, I'm wondering how this will play into addressing racism among first responders. There have been allegations recently, and there have been those that are much older, of those in the firefighters, paramedics, and police service having racial biases towards individuals. This can lead to loss of life at times. Are these individuals going to be included in this anti-racism training? And if not, what's going to be done to address anti-racism within first responders?
Well, the anti-oppression and cultural competency training is kicking off in the Department of the Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service, but it is intended to be rolled out citywide. And as I mentioned in my preamble, the direction from council with respect to this specific launch of the first ever anti-racism week for the city of Winnipeg was directed by council in July of 2020. Systemic racism is unfortunately not a new phenomena, but we are certainly taking a citywide approach within the public service, but also throughout the community, and that work is continuing. And this is just one of many measures that we're taking to try to combat systemic racism in the public service and throughout the community.
Okay, I'm also curious as to how you're going to engage the public on this. I think it's pretty fair to assume those who want to tackle racism and those from marginalized communities would be more than happy to partake in these dialogues. But how are you going to, engage those who may actually have biases towards certain communities and would be more resistant to addressing these issues if they, are part of the problem?
Twofold. I mean, one, fortunately, we're not in this battle against racism alone. As a municipal government, we're trying to do our part to lead within our jurisdiction and within our means. But we've got a whole network of organizations like Immigration Partnership, like the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba, and many others that are helping row in the same direction. Secondly, Hopefully, members of the media will make sure this is the lead story and the front page, top fold, so that we can get the word out and encourage Winnipeggers to be part of this dialogue and, join our Indigenous Accord, sign on, and take all the steps they can to help combat racism.
Sean from CBC.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Sean.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Morning.
I think we should be very clear about the ATU and what they're saying. What we're referencing is a letter written to you and copied to Mr. Ruda from last week. And the allegation here is that you met and Mr. Van Gerwen from the ATU was there 5 years ago, and a commitment was made for 2-day training for Indigenous awareness. And to this date, 2/3 of transit drivers have not received that 2-day training. And he's framing it as a failure on the part of the city of Winnipeg. And so I'd ask you and Mr. Ruda to respond to that. I don't want you to not have the opportunity to really reflect on an accusation as opposed to, hey, or where are you with the training?
Well, I'll certainly respond to ATU directly, and we'll do that in due course, Sean. But the city's plans, you'll recall when council directed mandatory reconciliation training for all of our employees, the public service mapped out various levels of training depending on the nature of the positions held by our employees. And that's been carried out by our public service. Senior directors undertook and have been undertaking the 2-day training. The vast majority of employees were always intended to receive a half-day training. And you'll recall at the time, it wasn't an uncontroversial position to start doing something that had never been done before, which is to mandate reconciliation training for all members of the public service. And so the direction from council and the public services plans have been carried out the way that they were approved by council and directed.
I wanted to ask Ms. Ross, it's very hard for people that are not Indigenous, not of color, to understand the road that those who are go through. Perhaps you could reflect on this moment and tell people that are white like me what it's like and where we need to go, because I don't think that we're in a position to understand it well enough.
Thank you, Sean, for the question. And I suppose it's difficult to put in a small context, but I have children, young children that have grown up in the city of Winnipeg. And when you are afraid when your child leaves, I have 2 girls, for them to leave the house because of the way that they're going to be treated, because of the way that they look. My daughter was actually lost as she came home from the movies, and she got on the wrong bus and ended up on the opposite end of the city in a part of town that personally I don't view as diverse and understanding, and was afraid for her to be lost and to be mistreated simply because of the way that she looked, because we have these negative images of First Nations people when we see someone on the street, when we meet someone. I was trained as a lawyer, and when I went to court as a lawyer, I was treated differently. People thought that I was, the accused simply because of the way that I look, and that despite the fact that I was dressed in my finest suit at the time, still this perception that we have about each other. And it's that perception that, as certainly as a First Nation person and as a First Nation woman, is the first thing that we sense when we meet people. And so to be worried about your child when they leave the home, that they're going to not only just be verbally treated differently, but, to be mistreated physically, to be denied respect, to be denied services. And that's a daily occurrence simply because of the way that you look. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. People should be treated with respect immediately. And it's difficult to combat that because we have so many negative images about each other, and people perpetuate that. And, we do have to look to the media and hold the media accountable as well, because they portray these images and they continue to show these images. And so people that don't perhaps have exposure to awareness courses or dialogue and conversation internalize these, and that's what they go to. We hope that people, citizens, as was asked, what do you do with people that don't want to change? If you can at least just attend some of these events and listen to a different perspective, listen to how people are treated. And I think, as human beings, we have to look at that and say, why is that? Take a hard look at that and say, what needs to change? How do I then, as an individual, have to change? And you may never, understand that experience and understand that feeling, because it's also a feeling of fear. It's a feeling of discomfort. And as I said, this is home for First Nations people. This is their home. How do you feel if you were uncomfortable in your own home? And I think that, kind of brings it down, and you're mistreated in your own home, and it shouldn't be. And so, this is an opportunity to hear as well from other people what their experiences are, because my experiences will be different from somebody else. But it goes to the point, I think, of fear of stepping out of our comfort zones and asking and simply just getting to know each other. And I think once we start to get to know each other, we can break down those barriers that prevent us from living well as people. Thanks, Sean.
Jonas from City TV.
Good morning, folks. It's Jonas from City. Mr. Alavidi, Ms. Ross, we're coming off a year where we're seeing the rise of white nationalism, white supremacy, maybe more than ever, driven, I think, a large part about what happened down in the States. These conversations have expanded across international borders. And just maybe a thought on the timing of this, as these forces do seem to be as strong as I can remember them in my lifetime.
I don't know, Loretta, you want to go, or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for asking this such an important question. I think these voices or these movements, in order for them to take space in our society, they need to be involved. They need to be motivated by some type of a platform, a space that created for them to exist. And we need to eliminate that space for those racist groups, I would say, or people who do not understand what diversity is all about. They see diversity as a threat as opposed to richness to the society. As a newcomer, I came to this country. I came because one of the most beautiful things that drive me to live my life and raise my children is the fact that we are a diverse society. The richness of diversity that exists allows us to see richer Canada, better country, and on a global scale, we are enjoying a very good country. And it is not acceptable to allow movements such as the one that you mentioned to flourish. And I think in order for them to flourish, they need that space to be created. This week that we're planning together is to create the opposite space for those who are without voice, give them a little bit of space so they can actually come, share what they feel the way that the commissioner just mentioned. These are personal encounters that is very, very impactful to hear. It's not easy to live life like that. And newcomers are expected to integrate in the society. Integration would not happen in a healthy manner if racism exists. Racism is normalized pandemic, that's from my perspective, over centuries. And human beings started to kind of come up with different ways to live with it, but things exist and exist everywhere, not only here in Canada or in Winnipeg, everywhere in the world. However, to minimize the impact of racism, we need to come together. We need to condemn the groups that promote hate or allow people to come out in media or different platforms and speak and promote division and given superior position to those who they think are naturally gifted or privileged. If you have a privilege, please look into it, recognize it, but also ask your questions. What I'm going to do about this privilege? Recognition is one thing, doing something about it is another. Thank you.
Thank you for that, folks. I guess just as we continue this conversation, you know, this is for white people. What should we be taking away from these conversations?
I'll maybe take a kick at it and invite other speakers to jump in. I'll just say racism hurts everyone. It holds our community back. When our friends and our neighbors are feeling like they're second-class citizens, we're all held back, and we all suffer as a result, indirectly at a minimum. And so I think it's really incumbent upon all of us as Winnipeggers to try to continue to learn more about the damage that racism causes and to be part of the solution by participating in actions and events that can lead the kind of positive change that we all desire for us and our kids.
If I could just add just one thing to what the mayor said, I don't want this to be viewed as a target towards, as you've said, to white people. We're all residents here. We all live here. We all pick up different perceptions and stereotypes, and we act on those and treat people differently regardless of your heritage and your culture. And so it's not a target to you know, a certain group of people. It's for everyone. I mean, this is all of our home, and so we each have to take the time to learn about each other, because we're you know, nobody is going anywhere, and so it's important that we learn how to live together, and one of the best steps in doing that is getting to know each other better. And I think this week provides an opportunity to do that. It also provides that opportunity to start tackling some of those difficult barriers that have prevented us from doing so. So you know, we have to get over the fear. We have to kind of get over ourselves in that way, and start tackling together the bigger problems that we all face. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you.
Amber from Global, did you have any final questions?
I'm okay, thanks.
Thank you. James from the Winnipeg Sun, did you have any final questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from the Winnipeg Free Press, do you have any final questions?
Yeah, I did want to ask just because it came up with the ATU letter, and then I think just beyond that, for looking at the kind of racism that maybe city employees are experiencing at times that they've reported, is there an effort as sort of part of this week or otherwise to educate the general public, or make it, I guess, I don't know if that would be penalties when these kind of incidents occur, that sort of thing, to sort of combat that harassment?
Well, if I understand your question, Joanne, you know, what we're trying to do is draw awareness to these issues in the broader public as part of Anti-Racism Week. I mean, that's the, you know, one of the reasons behind the week. The other is to just illustrate that racism obviously affects us all in different ways. In terms of, are you asking if there's additional information of where people can report incidences of racism?
No, just I know that there are things in some offices like zero tolerance of aggression, that sort of thing, when a customer or a client, anyone wanting to access city services maybe comes up to the desk, you don't tolerate yelling or you don't tolerate that kind of behavior. I'm just wondering if that kind of, if there's a way to sort of deal with this in the moment when these things are happening to make people know it's not acceptable, whether they be transit riders or accessing another city service, that sort of thing.
One of the things I'll say, I mean, part of the reason why I and council have been leading on these efforts over the last number of years is we want to make sure that we're creating a space for our employees and for the public to voice concerns, to let issues see the light of day so they can be properly dealt with. I know in terms of the Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service, for example, there have been additional means of points of access to senior leadership through dedicated contact information for incidents of concern, and additional resources including reminders to city staff about the code of conduct, for example. And so that ongoing education by senior directors continues, as well as more public efforts like the ones we're announcing here today.
Did you have a follow-up, Joanne?
I guess just with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, there has been a lot of stories recently about some incidents there. Is there more being done within that? Is that why you brought that up? There's more being done within that particular department, or do you see need for that?
Well, I think the need is citywide, and it's also, quite frankly, I think other levels of government should follow our lead on some of these efforts as well. You know, the systemic racism isn't unique to any one level of government. It's systemic, and so it's throughout our society. It's within every level of government. It's within the unions. It's within organizations, the private sector, not-for-profit, and so you know, what we've tried to do as a council is really indicate that we acknowledge systemic racism and then provide the leadership that's required. But it's citywide, and it's something that the means or the efforts that we're announcing today with this week, but all of the other things that I mentioned in my preamble that we've been doing are intended to really cover every department within the city of Winnipeg, and even council. You know, members of council and I will take the training, and I expect that we'll continue to learn more, just like we did when we took our reconciliation training.
Michael from CTV, do you have any final questions?
Yeah, I guess just privy to what Joanne was saying, and then a clarification on my first question. Are first responders, so fire, paramedic, and police officers, going to be partaking in this anti-racism training?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah. All city staff will be undertaking the anti-oppression and cultural competency training.
And that will be kind of the same for everybody? There won't be any discrepancies between levels? Everyone will get the same amount of training?
I'll leave that for the public service and directors to speak to how it's being implemented, but the direction from council has been clear. We expect that every department and every employee will undertake anti-oppression and cultural competency training.
That's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sean from CBC, any final questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the ATU is saying that most of their members have received zero of the training that was promised several years ago. So I just want to be clear from you that that's not your understanding?
Correct. Yeah, and we can certainly have folks follow up with you, Sean, in terms of some of those details, but the public service has done a good job in rolling out the training. Let's also keep in mind, I mean, the fact that you have a union wanting to embrace and have more training. I'll just say, you know, if you step back, that's a good thing. It's a good thing that people want to take these matters seriously, including our unions. Certainly we'll follow up with them, and we can provide you with additional information on that specific question, Sean, to help get an answer to you.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to the participants. Appreciate it.
Jonas from City, did you have any final questions?
I'm good, guys. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Albini, Mr. Ross. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
I believe that concludes today's media event. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.